If I could get everybody's attention, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Jillian Riley, and I'm the president of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Viewers, thank you very much for joining us today. Our club offers members and guests a diversity of opinions that often inspire. In developing our events, we strive to ensure not only a diversity of perspectives, but of speakers as well. The provincial minister responsible for the status of women is a great example. Before I formally introduce her, let me tell you about some of our upcoming events. On Monday, April 23rd, our Premier, Kathleen Wynne, will be at our podium to have a pre-election discussion. And looking ahead to May, on Monday, May 7th, popular MSNBC broadcaster Ali Velshi will join us to speak about being an anchor in the Trump era. To order your tickets or to learn more about the club, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. You can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I want to express a special thanks to today's event sponsor, PwC, represented by Anita McQuaid. Anita, thank you very much for your generous sponsorship. I also want to acknowledge the youth and young leaders who are with us today from Civic Action Leadership Foundation. Please stand so that we can welcome you and acknowledge you. Thank you very much for joining us today. And now, our guest speaker. Members and guests, please don't forget, if you have any questions, use the Q&A cards that have been provided at your table, and we will collect them later on. Sexual harassment, gender equality, pay equity, violence against women, these issues are being talked about like never before. Last month, our provincial government introduced a detailed economic empowerment strategy for women. The Then, Now, Next plan will tackle a number of obstacles that women face in the workplace and in society. These include fair pay and fair hiring practices. Ending violence and sexual harassment also features prominently in the innovative strategy. The Honourable Harinder Malhi oversees one of the ministries that will bring this innovative new economic empowerment strategy to reality. As Minister for the Status of Women, her ministry focuses on economic security, gender-based violence, and leadership. Minister Malhi was elected in 2014 as the MPP for Brampton-Springdale. Before becoming minister, she was parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport. She also served as parliamentary assistant to the minister responsible for women's issues. The minister was a member of the Select Committee on Sexual Violence and Harassment, a key priority for her current ministry. The former Peel District School Board trustee is actively engaged in her Brampton community. She has volunteered with municipal, provincial, and federal groups, including those that serve the Canadian South Asian community. We welcome Minister Malhi to the stage, and the Canadian Club of Podium is now yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to start by recognizing that Toronto is located on the traditional territory of many Indigenous people dating back countless generations. I want to show my respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in our governing relationship. My name is Harinder Malhi, and I'm Ontario's Minister for the Status of Women. It is a great honor to be here with all of you today. I want to thank the Canadian Club for inviting me to speak about women's empowerment in the era of Me Too and Time's Up. And I think we can all agree that we are in a moment. Until the last few years, rooms like this might not have hosted lunches to talk about how grassroots movements like Me Too and would relate to finance, industry, economics, and tech. Maybe we felt that women were certainly a little less than totally equal, but we've made so many huge strides in terms of formal equality. Today, we have more reproductive rights than ever. We have maternity and paternity leave. Girls today can grow up and imagine themselves in any job. We have many more women in positions of power, more women owning businesses, women leading FP 500 companies, and even women leading countries. We can vote and hold political office. In fact, I'm the first Sikh woman to be appointed to Ontario's cabinet. It did, however, take 151 years for us to be here today. So we know that change can be slow. Sometimes it can be too slow. And that was the story that many of us have told ourselves. Progress may be slow, but we have come a long way. So until recently, many people, and maybe many of the people in this room, thought that we were almost there. Men and women both saw progress and thought that we were closing in on lasting change. I should add here that there are women who don't have the privilege to be in rooms like the one that we're in today, whether they be marginalized women, women of color, Indigenous women, women living with disabilities, or living in poverty, they haven't likely been able to come out and share their story. Their experiences are definitely different than the ones of us today in this room. But I think you'll agree that in the last few years, there's been a change in how we think about equality and how we think about equity. And in this last year, it's like the whole world has woken up. We see how much further, but we also see how much further there is to go. We know that we've come a long way, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We've heard the stories of women coming forward this past year, and it's important to acknowledge the courage it takes to stand up and say, "Me too." Their stories have become all too common. So many have said that they've been forced to choose time and time again between standing up for their rights, for their dignity, or for keeping their job. They've said that no matter how glamorous or successful their lives may be, there are still people who try to exert power over them just because they are women. These stories force us to confront the hard truth that we have not done enough to stop sexual violence and harassment from happening. Too many Indigenous women and girls have gone missing or been murdered. Too many women carry the experience of violence with them every single day. And violence works viciously with other factors to tear women down. It combines in terrible ways with racism, poverty, colonialism, and ableism. And at the same time, it's everywhere. We know that 1 in 3 women in Canada will experience sexual violence at some point in her life. 1 in 3. We're forced to look in the mirror and admit that we don't live in a society where women are truly equal. We have to think about the little girls on the playground and think 1 in 3 of those little girls will experience violence at some point in their life. We cannot sit silently and accept these statistics as normal. We need to ask why this is happening, and we need to do something about it. So as a society, we're waking up. We see women are less equal than we thought, and we're committing to change. But gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and sexual assault, they don't exist in a vacuum. I'm sorry to say, there's inequality in all parts of women's lives. Gender-based violence is made worse by economic inequality, and women who experience harassment and assault are held back in the workplace. To understand where we are, we need to take a broad view. But the good news is, by taking the broad view, we can make a big difference. However, I do have more sad and frustrating facts for you, but I promise that there is a path forward at the end. And we can reach it if we commit to becoming agents of change, because equality goes beyond our boardrooms and pay stubs. It begins by acknowledging that gender inequality still exists and that women face barriers. So, let's just go to the next slide here. Sometimes these barriers are easy to see, but other times they're subtle or unconscious. According to a survey from McKinsey Global Institute, fewer women are being promoted than men, and a disproportionate number of women are in entry-level jobs. In fact, in Canada, men are 2 to 3 times more likely to hold senior management positions than women. Think about that. We have a pipeline of women. In fact, women make up more than 50% of university graduates, and they're starting their careers in entry-level jobs, but they're not holding senior management positions. What's discouraging is that this figure has hardly changed since the late 1980s. Another figure shows us that women in Ontario still earn less than men on an annual basis, almost 30% less. And that figure is much worse for women of color, women living with disabilities, the LGBTQ community, and for Indigenous women. Does this sound like equality to you? So now I want to say it's time for action. There's a movement, there's a moment, there's a need, and that is an opportunity. Even Gloria Steinman said she's never seen activism quite like this before. Now it's up to all of us to make it count. We each have a responsibility to build on this momentum and to live in a way that upholds the values of an inclusive and equitable society. You are all leaders in your fields. You have the opportunity to influence the conversation, and you can do it in big ways and in small ways. For my part, I feel very fortunate to be in a position where I can help bring about positive change for Ontarians. I grew up in a family where I was very active in politics and in the community, and I've believed since I was a child that civic engagement was very important. It was important because the role of government is to provide people with the opportunity to realize their full potential. My parents came to this country as immigrants from India, and they worked very long, hard hours to build a comfortable life for me and for my brother. But they never lost sight of what was important, and for them, that was helping the people around them. When my father entered the public service in 1993, it was with the trust and support of his community. He became the first turban Sikh member of parliament outside of India. And by the age of 12, I was knocking on doors, and I knew what it was about. I knew how to knock on doors. I knew what a membership form was, which is probably not much for a 12-year-old. I remember our house being filled with people who had questions, people who had criticisms, or some people that just needed a hand. From my parents, I learned the value of listening, and I learned the true meaning of community. It's one of the things that actually inspired me to enter politics myself. So when, in January of this year, Premier Kathleen Wynne appointed me to be the Minister of the Status of Women, I was both grateful and determined to take this new opportunity to serve the people of Ontario and to work to make a better life for women and girls across this province. I'm proud to be a part of a government that is committed to advancing gender equality. And with a record number of women at Queen's Park, over 45% of our cabinet is now made up of women. And I know that we can make a difference. In fact, we already are making a difference. And again, we do it by taking a broad view, because inequality does not exist in a silo, but neither should our work. I believe that investing in childcare, senior care, social assistance, and ending gender-based violence, and increasing the number of women on boards are things that affect every single one of us. You can really see the broad view at work under the leadership of Kathleen Wynne, our province's first female premier. So let's take a minute just to see how this commitment to gender equity is playing out into public policy. Our government is making historic investments for women and girls in Ontario. Just last month, we released our budget. It's a plan for care, but it's also a plan to grow the economy and create more jobs. That's why we introduced affordable childcare. Childcare is key. It's a barrier we need to clear if we're going to close the gender wage gap. A Statistics Canada survey from 2010 showed that compared to men, Canadian women spend twice as many hours per week providing unpaid childcare. And just last month, Premier Kathleen Wynne announced that beginning in 2020, full-day licensed childcare will become free for preschool children from the age of 2.5 until they are eligible to start kindergarten. This will save families an estimated $17,000 per child. We are able to make this commitment because we've already started rolling out 100,000 new licensed childcare spaces across Ontario. This is work that we've been planning for a long time. These investments will allow parents to go back to work when they choose and give their children the best start in life. But the truth is, it can sometimes be hard for parents to go back to work, especially if they need to upgrade their skills. And we're working to make it easier for them. Again, we're taking the broad view. Beginning this school year, college and university tuition is free for hundreds and thousands of students who are struggling to pay for it. That includes over 13,000 single moms who today are working towards their degrees and diplomas without worrying about the cost of tuition. As I said earlier, research shows that it's mostly women who are working at entry-level and minimum wage jobs. And we've also introduced a living minimum wage to help lift these workers out of poverty. No one should have to choose between paying a bill and buying groceries. That's why we raised the minimum wage from $11.40 an hour to $14 starting this past January. And we're helping to lift the financial burden off of families in other ways too. For example, by providing free medications to children under the age of everyone under the age of 25. Since this program, known as OHIP Plus, started on January the 1st, over 1 million young people have already benefited from having access to free prescriptions, and these are including asthma inhalers, diabetes test strips, and even birth control. When it comes to women's reproductive rights, as of February, all abortion clinics in Ontario now have what are called safe access zones. Under this new legislation, abortion-related protests are no longer allowed within these 50-meter zones. This means a woman can walk into a clinic without being harassed, intimidated, or recorded. It means a doctor can deliver services without having to worry about walking to his car at the end of the day or having protesters show up on her lawn at night. I know that that was a long list: affordable childcare, free tuition, free medication, a higher minimum wage, protecting reproductive rights. So let me bring you back to right where we started. These are all a part of our government's blueprint to advance gender equality. And even though I'm just scratching the surface here, I think you can already see the big picture, the broad view. All of these things taken together show the impact of having women in leadership. And all of these things move us further towards a society where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. This roadmap we're creating is not about speaking for women. It's about getting barriers out of the way so that women can write their own stories and build their own futures. Of course, this is the right thing to do, but it is also economically the smart thing to do. A report from McKinsey Global Institute last year said that if we address gender inequalities in Ontario, we could add $60 billion to the province's GDP by 2026. And if we don't act, we're leaving the money on the table. Let's turn the page now and look at in more detail one of the ways we're doing this. Last month, during International Women's Week, I had the honor of hosting a Women's Economic Empowerment Summit. It was an inspiring day with a great turnout. We had a lot of meaningful conversations and panel discussions about some of the challenges that women still face and what can be done about it. And because I know a lot of you go to and host a lot of conferences, let me tell you, we made it certain to include as many diverse voices as possible. Ultimately, the conference was a celebration of women who are defining their fields, making history, and building a stronger society. Premier Wynne was there, and she launched a major new government strategy called Then, Now, Next, Ontario's plan for women's economic empowerment. This strategy is the first of its kind in Canada. It is the first whole-of-government approach to women's economic empowerment in Ontario. It lays out a 3-year plan to increase gender equity, challenge biases, and remove barriers that people face at work, at home, and in their communities. That includes barriers like the ones I talked about earlier: the gender wage gap, the underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, harassment in the workplace, and the horrific impact of gender-based violence. The strategy outlines a number of actions that we are taking. We're implementing a plan to increase the number of women on public and private sector boards. One of the ways that we'll be doing this is by leveraging our own buying power as government to encourage large firms that sign new contracts with us to reach a target of 30% women on their boards. This is big. We've heard time and time again that we have to use procurement to make a difference, and we listened. We're also very committed to using gender-based analysis when we make a government policy. We're encouraging every ministry to apply a gender lens to ensure we're removing barriers instead of reinforcing them. We will expand and strengthen women's centres, which provide wraparound services, a safe space, skills training, and a variety of other vital supports to marginalized women, including newcomers, women of color, and those who are experiencing or at risk of violence. For many women, these centres can be life-changing. Imagine being a new immigrant who doesn't speak the language. She doesn't know many people in the community. These centres help her build her social circle and networks. They provide information and referrals to help her navigate through her new community and help her write her resume, find housing, and in some cases, even support through a dangerous situation. Another commitment we've made under our new strategy is to support leadership amongst young women and continue to support Indigenous women's leadership. And we're also working to bring more transparency and fairness to practices around hiring and pay. This makes Ontario Canada's first province to tackle pay transparency as a part of the plan for a fairer society. We've introduced legislation that, if passed, we will require large firms at first to track and publish information about compensation in their organizations. This would give women the information they need to negotiate a fair wage and allow their contributions at work to be valued equally to that of a man's. Lack of information about pay is a huge barrier preventing women from benefiting equally in our economy. All of these steps are steps under our new strategy that will help create a province where women can succeed on any path that they choose. And no matter how much we do to empower women economically, we also know that they will never be secure unless they feel safe in their communities, in their schools, and in their homes. That is it. And unfortunately, the truth is that a lot of women don't feel safe. And you'll remember that earlier I said that 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence in her lifetime. They're also 4 times likely to be killed by an intimate partner. Gender-based violence can happen to anyone, not just women. It affects people of every social class and every culture. But evidence tells us that women and children are most at risk. The risk is even greater for racialized, Indigenous, and newcomer women, women living with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. This violence is far too widespread, and it has a devastating impact. The economic impact of spousal violence in Canada is $7.4 billion. That includes medical and legal costs, lost income, and lost productivity. The emotional impact on individuals and on entire communities, that can't be quantified. Last fall, people from my ministry sat down with agencies from across the province and those with lived experiences with violence who shared their stories with us. We heard stories of women who continue to live in dangerous situations because they can't find safety. We heard about women who had been waiting far too long for counseling services, And we also heard from survivors about their struggles to navigate through the system. I've personally seen and felt the impact of violence in my own community of Brampton. And already this year, 6 women have been murdered in Peel Region, 4 of them within the space of 2 weeks. 1 death would have been too many. These women who had so much life left to live, I can tell you how much pain there is in our community right now and how much healing needs to happen. What this experience has really driven home for me is that we must act. And I know that there are no easy fixes. I know this is not a problem that will be solved overnight. Gender-based violence is complex. It happens for many, many different reasons. And it hits people, but it does hit people in every single part of their lives. And that means that it needs a big approach, a big cross-government approach and response. And that's why last month our government announced It's Never Okay, Ontario's gender-based violence strategy. This strategy is an investment of up to $242 million. It will help survivors and their families get the support they need when they need it. It will prevent violence before it begins by intervening early and working to change attitudes and norms that perpetuate the cycle. The strategy builds on our commitment to creating a province free from domestic and sexual violence, and it recognizes that we are in a time of change. Awareness is higher than ever, perspectives are changing, and more people are coming forward asking for supports and services. Our new investment under this strategy means that up to 1,000 more women and children will have a safe bed when escaping violence. It means 90,000 more hours of counseling. This translates to a 35% increase to the overall budget of sexual assault centres. I had the privilege of making this announcement along with 2 of my colleagues to a room full of frontline workers, survivors, and people who have dedicated their lives and their time and energy to ending gender-based violence. The reaction and the enthusiasm was contagious. One of them referred to it as Feminist Christmas. Because they know what an investment like this means. They are the ones who have shown leadership by advocating for change. We couldn't do this work without them, and we can't do it without you. Government can do its part, and we are, in all the ways that I've talked about, including our strategies on economic empowerment and gender-based violence. But these strategies are more than just a priority for government. They are a call to action to bring about real change, a real cultural shift. We all have to work together. True equality for women is something that requires us all to be on board, both in thought and action. So I challenge each and every one of you, to be our partners in change in whatever way that you can. Examine your unconscious biases, because we all have them. Speak up when you see that somebody is being treated unfairly. Embrace the value that diverse perspectives can bring in the workplace and at home. Raise your daughters to believe that they can achieve anything, and raise your sons to believe in them too. Women have so much to contribute to our communities, to our economy, and to building a stronger future for our province. So let's make sure that they can. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. I know I will sign up to be a partner with you in change. You've shared some really wonderful things there. We do have some questions from the audience. So let me start with the first one. This is one we talked about at our table actually earlier. What advice do you have for women considering a career in politics?
So, as I said earlier, I think the civic engagement is very important. And I think that we need women around the table. I would encourage everybody to take that opportunity to find your support networks. I think that it's important because the lens that we bring to the table is totally different. And we can see that in the change that we're making today. If we didn't have a female premier, if we didn't have a cabinet that is almost 45% women, we would not have made some of the decisions that we made today. It's important for women to be involved in all levels of politics, whether it be municipal, provincial, or federal, because you need to be at the table to make change, to make lasting change, and to impact policy. I encourage women to take that next step. It's a courageous step. It can be scary at times. It can be intimidating at times, I'm not going to lie. But it's like any other new pursuit, right? Anything that you try can make you feel that way. So take that opportunity, embrace it, and you will reach your full potential.
Great, thank you. The next question, it's been 30 years since pay equity laws were passed in Ontario, yet women of this province still make 70 cents to every dollar a man makes. And I know you talked about some of this earlier, but what is the government doing to fix this?
So that's exactly what, when we talk about our pay transparency legislation, or when we talk about our women's economic empowerment, this is the reason why they're there. Our government has taken a number of approaches, a cross-government approach, to ensuring that we can start closing that gender wage gap. When I talked earlier about free childcare from ages 2.5 to kindergarten, this is so that we can close the gender wage gap. We know that when women take time off work, that actually adds to the gender wage gap that they're facing. So to be able to close that gap, we have now introduced an opportunity for them to be able to go back to work earlier, whether it be from the age of 2.5 years to kindergarten, or our full-day kindergarten program will allow women to have the ability and the supports they need to go back to work. We know that women are primary caregivers for not only children, but for seniors. And that's why our plan introduces caring. That's why we've added supports not only for our children, but for our seniors, so that they have the care when they need it. We need to show that care for all of our community to help women go back to work when they're ready.
Great, thank you. The budget's just been released. It's been called socially progressive by some and irresponsible by others. You've called this a good budget for women. Maybe you can tell us why. I know you already did speak to some of it as well. But
this is an amazing budget for women, whether we're talking about childcare, whether we're talking about free tuition, to allow those 13,000 single mothers to go back to work towards their degrees and be able to reach, again, their potential. We're showing them that we care. We're showing them that we're here to support them. This is a year that we had a balanced budget. We are ready to make these investments in our people. We are ready to make these investments in Ontario, to strengthen our future. We are investing today in our future. We have a balanced budget. The economy is doing well, and we have the lowest unemployment rate that we've seen in 17 years in this province. This is why the investments were necessary. We've increased minimum wage, we've strengthened our economy, we're creating jobs, and we're working towards a better Ontario.
excellent. Now, here's a good question. What is your ministry doing to encourage women to enter the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields? I think they call it STEM. Are you aware of efforts made by professions like engineering to get women licensed in technical fields? I guess it's a two-part question.
I've had the opportunity, especially even with my local chapter, to work with our local engineers and see the events that they're hosting to encourage women in engineering. And I can tell you a personal story. When I went to school, I lived in a house with 8 girls, and only one of them was an engineering student. So, but we know that there are more women going towards that. Our government as a whole has supported the idea of STEM. As you know, I come from Brampton Springdale, and we talked, our new post-secondary site for education is going to be looking at a STEM focus. We're encouraging STEM throughout our entire community, especially for women. We are doing everything we can to empower women to get that education that they want. This is when we talk about a whole government approach. This is how our free tuition comes in. This is how our childcare comes in. We are giving them that opportunity.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you to leave us with a last thought for the group.
My last thought would be, I really hope that we're working hard to build an equitable society, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing. If nothing else, I would ask all of you to be partners. You are leaders in your respective fields. You have the ability to influence the change in your communities. take that opportunity to help those that are vulnerable, to help our vulnerable communities and the vulnerable women in our communities, because you truly can. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Minister Malhi, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, I would like you to thank you so much for sharing the exciting details of the economic empowerment strategy for women. You made it clear that there is a sea change not only in our province but around the world. The roadmap that you have laid out is inspiring. It calls for action on issues that create barriers for women. Becoming the first province to tackle pay transparency demonstrates your government's commitments to women's issues. When we invest in making things better for women, everyone benefits as well as the economy. I know, as I said earlier, I will sign up to be a partner in change. We hope that the actions that are laid out in the strategy will give rise to brighter futures for all women in this province. We wish you much continued success as your ministerial portfolio introduces positive, important strategy on our behalf. Before we conclude, I would like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. To learn more about the club, please visit us at canadianclub.org. I would like to lastly thank you again for such a wonderful talk today. I know it's one that's very important for all of us. Once again, thank you to PwC for sponsoring today's event, and thank you all for attending on such a difficult weather day in the city, and we hear that by the weekend it'll be double digits and sunny. So we hope to see you again soon, and have a wonderful afternoon.